Welcome, travelers, to another episode of the Time Travel Trio podcast. I'm Jen.
I'm Matt.
And I'm Hyde.
And we're
the
Time Travel Trio.
Welcome. Hope you're ready to talk about time travel.
And Wrinkles.
And Wrinkles.
It's a laundry
and
show.
Oprah.
Oprah.
You get a lost dad, and you get a lost dad, and you get a lost dad. And giant Oprah, which is now, I'm going to refer to it forever as Mega Oprah.
Yeah.
I was, when we were watching it, I was thinking, like, she probably won't, but if, it's like this thing right now that, like, maybe Oprah will run for president, and I'm just thinking, like, all the memes and stuff of, like, giant Oprah, like, nothing but respect for my president. Like,
larger than life.
Like 50-foot Oprah. That's all I can think about. Anyway, if you haven't guessed, or read the title in your little computer or phone that you're listening to this on, I have chosen the 2018 recently released film, A Wrinkle in Time. Best review. Woo-woo.
This is the first time we've ever knowingly gone into a film that was a time travel and released in theaters. Now, that happened with Doctor Strange. We did not know that the time stone and thus time travel was going to be involved.
We often see movies together because we're friends. And
what?
Yeah, and so it was kind of nice to go in prepared, knowing that there would be some time travel here. So we can cover it. Yeah,
because Doctor Strange, we watched it, but we didn't review it for like a year after, like until it came out on home video. Like this for us, this
on
just
VHS.
came out. Yeah, home video.
Home video.
This just came out in theaters this weekend for us, and this will obviously be coming out after that. But it's probably still in theaters, I imagine.
Yeah, in 2 weeks.
Yes. So, in case you haven't read the books or seen the movies, a spoiler alert is in effect.
Yes.
So go out and see the movie. It needs all the money you can get, so give it to it before you listen to this episode.
Give it your money.
Give it to it.
Get it.
Shut up and take my money.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to talk about it. Those who are not familiar, again, spoiler alert, we're going to spoil things, but the synopsis is, after the disappearance of her scientist father, 3 peculiar beings send Meg, her brother, and her friend to space in order to find him. So this was directed by Ava DuVernay, who is great. As we mentioned, Oprah is in it, as well as Reese Witherspoon and Mindy Kaling, and it stars Zach Galifianakis. It stars Storm Reed, who is Meg Murray. She's great. Chris Pine's in it, as well as her dad. It was...
And Gugu Mbatha-Raw, right?
Yes. She plays the mom.
Yeah.
Yes, she was in the new Beauty and the Beast, if that name sounds familiar. Okay, so initial thoughts.
We just saw this literally last night at the time of this recording, and I think the first act is a little messy. Like, once they get to the actual space exploration, bending time and space, I think it gets way more interesting. It's a little clunky at the beginning, I think, because they're trying to throw a lot at you and they're trying to set the tone for the story, and it doesn't quite hit. But once we get on the adventure, I was in. Like, once we were there and we're flying around on Reese Witherspoon bok choy, I was like, that's like literally my first thought. I was like, this is like a giant bok choy ride, and I was like, just made me think about. I honestly for a second was thinking like, ooh, what recipe could I do with bok choy or buttered lettuce?
Yeah.
I was like, but once that happened, I was in it. But I will admit, it did take me about a good 20 minutes for me to really get into it.
Yeah, I mean, they had to set up Chris Pine, what he's doing, back in the past, a few years before they adopted Charles Wallace, and they had to set up the real world with Meg and her school and kind of how she is, and then once the misses show up, then it's.
Remind me, was Charles Wallace adopted in the book? That didn't seem familiar to me.
It's been a long. Let me say, if I make a mistake comparing the movie to the book, I have not read the book since it was a class assignment back in middle school or late elementary school. So I might be mistaken, but I believe he was not adopted.
I don't think he was adopted either, because I read this book not super long ago. I read it maybe a year or two ago, just because I knew this movie was going to come out, and that we would cover it. But I mean, it doesn't really matter. I think it's. Also, I think it's a plot line that they could have done away with. I don't think it really was super important.
I think it helped justify the diversity. Right. Because he was obviously a different ethnicity than Meg and Chris Pine and the mom. So I think it
Yeah,
helped
but,
that. But
Yeah.
I mean, other than that, it was like, it was okay. Let's go meet your brother. So that was like, like obviously they were like saying, yeah, we're adopting him now when he's a little baby, and then
Right.
And
they do manage to use that new aspect to put like more separation between Charles Wallace and his father when he said,
Right.
"Well, I'm not your real son. I'm adopted." So they did use. At least they didn't just do it as like diversity and here you go. At least they did have it come back.
That's true.
Later.
I liked it. I didn't love it. I will say I did enjoy it, and it definitely. So there's also like. I didn't look up what year. I should look that up. There's a TV movie. Thank you. There's a TV movie of Wrinkle in Time that came out that I've seen maybe 2 or 3 times in my life.
And within the last year.
Yeah, I watched it. I read the book and then I watched the TV movie. Maybe like a year and a half ago. So it's fairly fresh. But the thing I liked about this was just there was a lot of CGI, but the grandness of how they built these worlds was fun to watch.
Right.
But there was a lot of stuff that they took out that we'll kind of get to. There's a lot of stuff maybe towards the end that I wish... There was not a lot of stuff. There's a few things at the end that they kind of either glossed over or took out big chunks of, and that kind of disappointed me a little bit. But, as far as, like, overall, it was fine.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I didn't read the book, and I didn't see anything else, so this was like my first legit...
Well, you watched the TV movie with me, didn't you?
Not the whole thing.
Okay.
I remember certain stuff, like I remember her yelling, like, Charles Wallace! Because that's like in my head, and like I remember the scene with like the kids bouncing the ball in the weird, like, Stepford Wives place.
Yeah, cul-de-sac.
And I remember like the other places where she's like trying to find her dad, and he's like in a jail, and there's like other people in like an office jail building kind of thing.
Yeah.
I had like vague ideas of what was going to happen, but it was my first like legit, like let me sit down and actually watch this story thing. And I agree, it wasn't the best movie, but I enjoyed it.
Cool. Let's watch the trailer.
Close your eyes. See with mine.
You were a top student, but look at you now. You can't keep using your father's disappearance as an excuse to act out.
Is that his work? Well, what's it about?
Their dad, he wanted to touch the stars. Imagine that the ant here wants to get to her other hand.
The quickest option is to walk across the street.
But it turns out a straight line is not the shortest distance between 2 points. Not if you use a 5th dimension.
It's outside of the rules we know of time and space. So, the ant arrives in my hand instantaneously.
So you fall to space.
More likely wrinkle it. Where are we?
We heard a cry out in the universe.
Father's alive.
We believe he is, and we're here to help you find him. We are in search of warriors.
Warriors who serve the good and the light in the universe.
You're kidding.
Do I look like I'm kidding?
A little. I'm not.
Your father's trapped by an evil energy,
It's too strong for our light.
and the only one who can stop it is you. Be a warrior.
Love is always there, even if you can't see it.
Do you trust me?
I trust you!
Cool. I like that trailer.
Yeah, it's a good
Actually,
trailer.
I think it's a good trailer. There's a scene, so let's just get right into it because there's a scene in the trailer that actually doesn't appear in the book.
Or the movie.
Not in the book. That's what I meant to say. The movie. It doesn't appear in the movie. I think it is in the book. Is when they're kind of talking about, if you watch the trailer, which I recommend just watching it on YouTube so you kind of can see visually what we're talking about, but Meg is holding like a plastic ant, and then she has a string, and so she kind of like folds the string, and then the ant is in the other hand, and that's kind of what she's talking about.
Yeah.
Like, quote-unquote, wrinkling time to get instantaneously from one side of space to the other.
Yeah, it's the trope of explaining a wormhole that we hear about. Like, people fold a piece of paper, and they like, oh, you're here, you fold the paper. That's basically what they're explaining.
We talked about it in Interstellar, the example they used of, as you were saying, like, pushing a pencil through a piece of paper, through a hole in a piece of paper.
Yeah.
Which Interstellar took from Event Horizon. It's a trope, as you said.
It's just how people explain wormholes in real life. So obviously writers be like, oh yeah, let's just write that in the movie because that's what people do, and so everyone does it.
Right? He's like, I've seen 2 TED Talks.
Right. So that's kind of the how, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, there's more to it, and I don't know if you want to get into that now.
Sure.
But basically, Chris Pine and Gugu, they.
I know that's a tough one.
The mom and dad, they're scientists that work for NASA.
Yeah.
And they have equations basically that kind of they're trying to understand how to do this, how to wrinkle time, and they can't quite get it. I guess what's the mom's character's name?
Just Mrs. Murray.
She does have it for Kate, I think is her
I think
name.
it's Kate.
Well, yeah. So the mom, like, she has the equations, and Chris Pine, as you see in the movie, he figures out that love is what actually triggers the wrinkle to happen. Mm-hmm. So I guess like a combination of understanding the equations, like how they work and how the universe works, and then putting love in there, I think that's what makes a wrinkle happen.
Right. They also say at one point it's like because everything comes from the same like Big Bang. In theory, the stardust that you are made of, there are atoms of you across the universe. So as long as you can connect to those atoms through love, I guess it's like almost like points you can go to, like almost like what do you call those? Almost like jump points.
Yeah, I mean, they do allude to quantum entanglement. Obviously, that requires like 2 atoms to be near each other when they get, or I don't know, they have to be near each other. But in this, it's like atoms are like already quantum entangled, I guess, and so you tap into that, I guess. Yeah, they have some like little TED Talk kind of talk in the movie, and I think we have the clip.
Yes.
So, what if we are here for a reason? What if we are not just in the universe, but the universe is within all of us?
Think about quantum entanglement. 2 electrons, once bonded together, in love, if you will, suddenly separated by a galaxy, but somehow still just as connected. An unbroken union despite being galaxies apart.
And our most recent calculations show us that these fields connect us to other dimensions. Dimensions outside of the limitations of space and time. Imagine that. Imagine. Rather than enduring the oppressive rules of time and space, we could wrinkle it. 91 billion light years traveled like that.
So it's just a short clip, but it's a little bit longer in the movie, I think.
Yeah, but after that, everyone starts to like...
They kind of make fun of him.
Yeah, but I think he just ramble on some more stuff that would be relevant. But yeah, obviously the movie just came out, we don't have it. But yeah, they call it tesserine, right? Or tessine?
Tesserine, yeah.
Because it's like a tesseract, which is like a hyperdimensional cube that, they mentioned the 5th dimension, so outside of the X, Y, Z in time, they are folding this other dimension to get to where they need to go. Mm-hmm. And you can like choose which, so like you're in control of where you're going.
Yeah, so they kind of do it like, it's almost like mentally, they open themselves up to connect.
Yeah, it's almost like the Force where it's there, and if you understand it and know what it is, and you have the love to trigger it, then you can just like use the field to move. And
so the big thing in the movie is we follow Meg, and she doesn't have that. She's know who she is yet.
Right.
She doesn't like herself. She's closed off. And so the big thing that Oprah kind of tells her is, like, when Oprah tells you something, girl, you gotta like listen. But like, Oprah tells her, you have to accept who you are. There's a really powerful scene right before they meet Zach Galifianakis' character that Meg and Oprah have a really great conversation about kind of who you are as a person and accepting that. And she's kind of like, you wanted to go on this journey because you were hoping to come back as someone else. Why don't you try and learn who you are?
Right.
And do that first and see where that takes you. And feeling along those lines. And there's a lot of like really powerful emotional moments, I think. Not so much about like the time travel or the story in particular, but just like emotional human moments.
Right.
Of like Meg learning how to be more self-assured of who she is and accepting other people, and she doesn't trust anyone and all this kind of stuff. So that, I think, was really the big thing that they wanted to tell with this particular version of this movie.
I know. Yeah, it is good because, watching this, you can't help but think about the kids that are watching this, and they see this, like, girl who has faults and flaws, and then she embraces that, and that's what empowers her to be a warrior.
I mean, and I think girl or boy, whoever you are, I think you can relate to her character. Like, she's smart, but she's teased. Like, there's also, like, a girl who's a bully, and we see a moment later of, like, the darkness is in her because she has, like, all these insecurities about, I'm too fat, I'm too this, I'm too that, and that's why she's mean. And, it kind of is like, at the end, Meg learns, like I don't know, you leave the movie and you feel like, oh, I could see, like, Meg and this girl end up becoming friends.
Right, they do kind of hint at that because she waves to the girl and then the girl waves back and actually smiles.
Yeah.
And it's almost like she wanted to be Meg's friend, but because of her own insecurities, she just decided it'd be easier to be a bully to her than to actually, like, have to be friends with someone who was maybe someone who would challenge her in a certain way.
Right.
Which does happen, actually. That's a very real thing that happens with people.
Well,
and
and also in that moment, like, when she sees him in the backyard, does she see her dad too? Like, because if she does, then she sees that now Meg is with this boy that's cute, and now with her dad, and she's like, holy shit, her dad's back.
Right.
And, like,
so she sees that, she's
Meg's
like,
getting her life together.
Yeah, she's like, holy crap, Meg is like, she's like probably like blown away by all the stuff that she's seeing in the backyard.
She is kind of, you can see it kind of on her face, but I think, my point was kind of what you were saying, Hyde, that those types of stories, and just like showing, one, that it's possible. You don't have to travel, obviously, the universe to understand that, like, bullies are bullies because they're insecure about themselves, and, like, no one is perfect. Everyone feels those things, and, like, I really liked those moments. Those were the more powerful moments I felt of this movie, especially, like, at the end when the darkness showed her, like, this quote-unquote, like,
cool version.
Cool, like, cute, whatever.
Yeah,
like,
straight hair, no glasses.
Like, pretty version of her.
Yeah.
Not that she's not pretty, but, like, her mental image of what she thinks is pretty.
Right.
Is, like, this, like, she's got makeup and, like, skimpier clothes and straight hair, and she doesn't wear her glasses and this and that and whatever. And, but then decides, I don't want to be like that. I like being me.
Force pushes her away.
Yes.
Yeah, she uses the Force and, like,
she uses the Force.
She's got it going on.
Mark Hamill appears.
Yeah. So, those were the moments that I really
I think that's,
enjoyed.
Ava DuVernay is a very talented director with the works that she's done. She has spoken in interviews that she did this after doing the documentary The 13th, which is on Netflix, which is a very heavy documentary. It's an upsetting documentary to watch. And I think she wanted to do something much more light and much more family-friendly. You can definitely see where her strength as a director is coming through. Mm-hmm. I think with even though she does a pretty good job with some of the CGI spectacle, it's not her thing. That's not how she sees filmmaking. And I think that is where there is... Also, even though she's written some very good scripts, I think there was a few scenes where you could see, like, Jennifer Lee's voice coming through on some of the script where you're like, this is like, Jennifer Lee she's a very talented writer, but sometimes I feel like, I always had this feeling whenever I see some of her projects, particularly the first act, it feels like they always need like one or two more rewrites. Same thing happened with Frozen, where it's like, this is a really good movie, but this first act has some issues.
Yeah.
And that, it's like, I don't know, that's I don't have any disdain for Jennifer Lee. I think she's a fantastic writer. I've learned a lot from her. But that is something I've noticed a pattern with some of her films.
It could also be studio notes too.
Right, exactly.
I mean, who knows? But I agree with you. I think Ava's strength is the human parts of these movies, whether there's a bunch of CGI or no CGI at all. Like, that's where her strength lies, is like telling these emotionally hard-hitting stories and having those conversations. And like, there were moments that like I was tearing up. Like, I related to a lot of this, and I think that's why it was like an important story for young kids to see. Like Meg is like science and nerd, quote unquote, nerdiness, but she also like then loves that about herself, and like that's her strength, and she utilizes it, not just kind of tucks it away. Like, it's, you know, at first that's what we see. She's kind of like, oh, it's whatever, it's just something I know. Right. And then like she doesn't like it when Calvin compliments her hair and things like that, and then later,
where he has to compliment her twice.
We have to talk about Calvin because I just love him. I just want to like hug him and be like, you're precious.
I know. Every group needs a Calvin, man.
Yeah.
He was a good Calvin.
I feel like that little boy just triggered puberty for like lots of other little girls and boys, because like I mean, he has so many moments where he's like smoldering and just like he has that look where he's like
the character in the book too. It's kind of I said this after we're leaving because Matt and I have been like on a binge watching Sabrina Teenage Witch, and which by the way is a great show, and I think it's on Hulu. We have it on DVD, but I'll be quick. But in Sabrina, the love interest or main guy, his name is Harvey, he's what a woman would usually be in a series. He's kind of like, Sabrina saves Harvey a lot of the time. Harvey's the side piece. He's the one, whatever.
There's literally an episode where he tells a girl who he went on a date with to drive him home.
Yeah, well,
we actually just watched that.
We actually just watched that one, and the popular girl like takes him to Makeout Hill, and she's trying to get Harvey to cheat on Sabrina with her.
Right.
And he's like, he literally says the line, no means no.
Right.
And it's so powerful.
It is. It's such a great... Yeah. But I remember that even as a kid. I was like, yeah, you can't do that to Harvey. I was like, don't. Right. I was like, leave Harvey alone. But it also is funny because you're just like, you have the big jock football player who's like, I think you need to drive me home. Like, excuse me.
And he's like, no means no, Libby. Like, you need to drive me home. Yeah, it's like, it's an intense moment. But my point is, Calvin is kind of like the Harvey of this world. Like, he's very sweet. He like supports Meg in the best ways, and he's there for her. He's someone for her to lean on. But yeah, he's great, and I just, even in the book, I just love that character. He says, I don't know the exact line off the top of my head, but there's a line in the book where he says to her, like, after he meets her, he's like, don't you know you're the best thing that's ever happened to me? Something like that. And it's just...
so what woman doesn't want to hear that?
Like, and she's like 13. It's like, it's just... and he has his own shit, but like, she says this to him in the movie too, where she's like, you don't have any ties to this. You don't know my father. You don't have to be here, but you wanted to be. And like, that makes you like so amazing. And I just love Calvin. Anyway, to go on my Calvin rant. So, the rules of this traveling, this tessering, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
It's just kind of...
You kind of cover most of it.
You kind of have to love.
I know, yeah, I mean, the implications are like, you can travel huge distances in like no time at all. Mm-hmm. Where in the real world, if you want to travel 91 billion light years, it'll take you 91 billion years, because if you're traveling the speed of light, like, that's the most it can do physically. Mm-hmm. It would still take you 91 billion years, because light can't go faster than that. Mm-hmm. So that's what a light year is. So that's the limit, the speed limit. And this obviously gets you around there. Mm-hmm. And with that, like, there's all sorts of time dilation implication. So if someone were to travel like a light year at light speed, it would take them a year, but it would take you an instant. So you'd be sitting there for a year waiting for them, and so it's kind of like a
and we've definitely seen that before in movies. Even in like, the first thing that comes to mind honestly is like Twilight Zone, because that's like pretty fresh. But we didn't cover it, but there's an episode of Twilight Zone where like a guy goes into hypersleep in space for like 40 years, and the woman he loves was gonna get old, and so she ended up putting herself into hypersleep so that they were both the same age when he returned, but he didn't know she did that, so he took himself out of hypersleep so he would age, thinking that she would also age 4 years, so
Right.
they'd be the same age. So then when he gets back, he's old and she's young, and she basically leaves him, because all Twilight Zone episodes are pretty depressing. But, anyway, that was the first example that came to mind. But yeah, that's a thing.
These are the breaks.
Them's the breaks.
Yeah, I think in the TV movie, I remember they made a point to say, "Oh yeah, you just left" when they got back after the adventure.
Yeah,
that wasn't explicitly mentioned.
It did
in
seem
the
like
movie.
that, though.
Yeah,
I would say
it was
seemed
still
like,
daytime.
Like it wasn't like.
Yeah, the mom
it was
wasn't
maybe
worried, like,
within
where
the
have you
same
been?
hour or so or
Right.
something, but it was not instantaneous. But I'd say it was like maybe
It was shorter than the time they
very
experienced.
close
Yes,
to
very,
when
yeah.
they left. Yeah.
Yeah, and in that sense, it's just like time dilation. So if you travel somewhere that has more gravity, then your clock goes slower than someone else who is near lesser gravity. So if Camazotz, then they can spend 6 hours there, and on Earth it'll only be like 5 minutes, that kind of thing. So
yeah, that's something that
that's
comes up a lot in like Doctor Who.
Yeah,
for
Doctor
sure,
Who
stuff
and,
like
and
that.
Interstellar, they both use that same kind of idea.
Yeah, which is cool. It's a cool concept.
Yeah.
Which
There's
speaks to
also.
the sorry.
Oh no, I was going to talk about consequences.
The consequence of it is if you get stuck in a very particular place of Camazotz, you could be there for what seems like maybe a few days, and it's actually been like 4 years, like the father.
Yeah, he has this moment where we don't know how long he thinks he's been
I was
there.
gonna
He
ask.
didn't say, but
he certainly doesn't think 4 years.
no, he's
he's shocked. when
He's
it
very
says-
shocked when she says he's been gone for 4 years. I would say maybe he's been there a few months.
Yeah.
I would assume
Right.
just
Yeah.
from like how he doesn't really look super different, but his hair is
He's graying and all
Yeah.
that jazz.
But I was going to say another consequence of tessering is when Meg first does it, it's like it's a lot harder for her, and it talks about it more in the book, and I think actually in the TV movie that it's like it's painful for her to do it, like physically.
It was in the movie.
It was in the movie, but like there were times that like she had to like rest for like 12 hours
Oh,
before
gotcha.
she
Okay.
could like do it again. Like it wasn't just like she woke up on the floor. It was
Okay.
like actually like hurt her for a while. But I think that was because I was trying to say
The
that like
pace
while
of it.
while she was accepting herself, when she accepted herself, then it got easier for her to do it.
Yeah, it was a great moment in the movie where like after she saved the day and she's like experienced it for the first time. It's like glorious, like flying
Yeah, it's
through,
really-
and
yeah.
it looks really cool.
That to me
ribbons.
was very Ava.
Yes, that was a very Ava
Yeah.
scene. That was like that had her imprint on it.
Yeah, it was also cool because like we only see the traveling through her perspective, and when she doesn't do it right, she gets like suffocated, almost like in The Prisoner when she's being
Right.
up against the ribbons, and then like when she's doing it right, you see the ribbons like flying around her and like kind of flowing with her,
Right.
as opposed to like suffocating
But
her.
what's crazy though is in the book, like that's how they experience tessering, is that like they're almost suffocated, and then when they think they're about to like not be able to breathe anymore, then they're released, and that's like how it works. So, but the movie kind of changed it a little bit.
On a visual thing without having to explain too much what's going on.
Yeah.
Because in a book you can kind of explain the feeling and the emotion.
Mm-hmm.
But in a movie it makes sense, particularly the message that Ava was going for,
Yeah.
clearly. I like that change. I like that it was like, no, it doesn't have to be that way. Because that's
Yeah.
how a lot of things I think in life feel for people,
Mhm.
particularly when you're a kid and you're growing up and you're going through puberty and you're trying to figure out who you are.
Yeah.
Everything seems painful to do because you don't know if you enjoy it or if you want to do it. And then once you find that thing that actually you're passionate about and like actually you're good at it and makes you happy, it does feel easy. It does feel like ribbons in the sky.
Yeah, very true. Cool. So, yeah, I loved the scene when they finally get back and like the dad slowly comes around the corner and the mom is like floored, and that was sweet. One of my favorite things though was how they told the Meg Calvin quote unquote love story. I thought really well done actually.
It was natural and it's appropriate.
Yeah, and it can be hard with younger ages. Like these kids are a little bit too young to like confess their love for
Right.
each other.
Yeah,
but you
just
could
make
tell
out.
that they did. Yeah, you could tell that they did like obviously it's changed between them and they care about each other, and like I just thought it was so precious and relatable when he's like, "Can I call you later?" And I was glad she didn't say "you better" because I hate that, but it was that kind of like moment that like he almost needs her more than she needs him now.
Right.
Like he's going to deal with his father, and he like while Calvin was there when she was finding her father, he was kind of a crutch for her, and now it's kind of reversed. I think like if we ever see more of their story, it's kind of the other way around. She now is so much more sure of herself that he can use her as a crutch to help his own life, and I think that's such a great way to tell a relationship.
Yeah, I agree.
I thought that was nice. So we wanted to mention, I put it in my notes so we wouldn't forget, David Oyelowo.
Oh yeah. He's the voice of the It.
He's the voice of the It, which is like the darkness.
I knew it was someone. I don't know his voice well enough, but I was like, I know that's some name that's doing the voice of the It.
Yeah, it was very distinct. It was because it wasn't just like reverberation on a track machine, like someone. There was a lot of like
someone that was performing.
Which was I will say I like the actor who played Charles Wallace. At first, I wasn't crazy about him, but I can see why they casted him because he is a very creepy little kid when he wants to be.
Yeah,
like
his audition was that scene,
right?
Like,
I was like, oh, like
evil.
Right, this is actually kind of unsettling.
I'm glad you brought that up because
and I just saw Annihilation a few weeks ago, and I was like, this is unsettling. Seeing this little kid be like evil, like what is?
I actually prefer the Charles Wallace from the TV movie. I think he is much better at. So Charles Wallace is like. They talk about it in this movie, but he's like this like beyond our comprehension of his intelligence is like surpasses all of us. Like he's this really intelligent kid who is basically psychic.
Yeah, he's like tied to the universe.
Yeah,
he's like a star child or whatever.
Yeah, there's like some scenes in the beginning that they kind of didn't really have in this. There was this scene with like Meg's like, this is how you always know to bring milk when it's raining and whatever. But that's not really the thing. It's like. He's psychic. He knows when things are going to happen. He knew that like Meg would come down late at night, and then like their mom comes down too, and it's like a whole thing. So I felt like just as someone who loves the book that wasn't touched on enough. I mean, it kind of showed that yes, he was more intelligent and superior in that sense, but yeah, I wasn't super crazy about the little boy, but he wasn't bad or anything.
No, he wasn't bad. He wasn't annoying. He just was like, at first, but I will say he really redeemed his performance once he started to switch bad, because that's very hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
And
it can make or break.
Yeah, because his eyes weren't like red the whole time, and so he had to really like act. But I personally like even that. I still prefer the Charles Wallace from TV movie. So if you agree with me and haven't seen the TV movie, watch it for Charles Wallace, and then stop watching because it's really long and really weird. There's a lot of weirdness in that TV movie. The other thing I wanted to mention, so Hyde and I kind of mentioned this after we saw it because he had read the book, but there was a lot of stuff that this movie took out that takes place in Camazotz. Most of like the last, I would say, not the last half, but like maybe the last third of the book completely takes place there. And a lot of that was cut out. And like, granted, I don't want this movie to be any longer. I think it was a good amount of time.
Right.
It was an hour 50. But the thing I liked about Camazotz is that it's very similar to Earth. And that a lot of, there's like buildings and people walking around and this and that. But instead, they're just kind of like thrust in this
ever-changing
like
hellscape,
green screen room, basically.
Yeah, pretty
much. And that's where they end up finding their father. But I wish they could have actually encountered some of the real people who were on Camazotz and kind of to see. So basically, the idea, which they did talk about, but I don't know if I would have really fully comprehended it if I hadn't known the whole backstory, is that the It can basically take control of anyone who lives there. And they're not all, like, quote-unquote, Stefford people. There's, like, actual people who are there. And he can kind of, like, be their voice and take over their bodies and do whatever. So, like, if they're running away from the It, as, like, Michael Pena, he can, like, then the It can jump into, like, the old woman walking across the street and be like, I'm still watching you.
Gotcha.
That kind of thing. That wasn't really expressed enough, I think, in this. They kind of alluded to it a little bit, but things like that I felt like helped to build this world and show, like, it's not that different from our world, but there is this weird, like, underlying darkness to it not just this random green screen room that
Yeah.
happens to also hold their father. Like, why would they put them in that place where they knew their father was?
Well, yeah. So I think when they're in like the neighborhood, the cul-de-sac, and then like they go to the beach, I think that's not it. But then once Charles Wallace gets taken away, they go to the place that's the Central Intelligence or whatever, and that's where for some reason their dad is.
Well, they don't really go anywhere. It kind of dissolves around them continuously. Like, they're in that. I think they're in that place since they get to the cul-de-sac.
It's hard,
actually,
it's hard to say.
It's hard to tell.
The geography is a little
because it's different than the book. And like
Yeah.
the book, it's actually a cul-de-sac. It's not like it doesn't disappear. It's and interestingly enough, in the book, there's a scene where like one of the little boys bouncing the ball, like bounces it off beat, and someone comes and like takes him, and it's this thing. And that too, I was actually surprised they took that out because that was like a really cool way to kind of see the like intensity of how this planet exists.
Right. I was waiting for it to happen.
Yeah, I
and it
was
never
too.
did.
Gotcha.
I guess they maybe thought that'd be too upsetting since it is aimed at maybe a younger crowd.
Yeah, that's true.
But I don't know. I mean,
But even like having him bounce off beat and then like even the mom maybe ushering him inside, maybe that's what happens. I don't remember. It's a little fuzzy.
Yeah,
but there's something along those lines that does happen.
It did. So. It seemed like in this movie, it did seem like they weren't real. It seemed like they were just manifestations of evil. It did seem like they were actual people. It felt like they were just there to
they were
be
separate.
Creepy. Yeah,
simulations.
Yeah, simulations.
Which is something that I actually disliked because I thought it was more powerful when they were real. Like, these are people who, this is their world, this is what they know. If they want to survive, this is the world they live in. It's almost like the evil Shigo planet from Kim Possible actually, like, reminds me of it. It's like,
that's Earth all along.
Yeah, right? But yet, because they originally, they go to this cul-de-sac because they see kids who are their age, and that's who they go to, like, talk to, like, hey, what's going on with this world, and whatever, and they, like, talk to these kids, and then these kids don't want anything to do with them because they don't want to get in trouble by talking to strangers who are not like them, not dressed the right way, that kind of thing.
Gotcha.
Anyway, the whole point is, like, it builds on a lot more of what Camazotz is. It's not just, like, some giant, like, spare green room that's, like, ever-changing to whatever it wants it to be, which is cool still, but it's different.
In the book or whatever, was it more of a achievement to find the father? Because she kind of just, like, walked, she, like, saw the steps and walked into the room.
Yeah, she uses... They go through these rooms and they find out... They have to, like, search on a computer or something, or, like, they're incognito somewhere.
That actually work for it?
And, yeah, and they had to figure out where he was being held, and there was a bunch of, like, almost like prison style rooms, you know what I'm talking about? And there was, like, a kid with a basketball, I remember, or something, and Calvin was playing, I don't know. It's a whole thing. But
I do remember the prison.
Yeah, and they find the one where her father's is, and then they can't see him, and that's when she uses Mindy Kaling's glasses, and it's like almost like an invisible, like, I want to say wormhole or something, that it's not like an invisible wall. Yeah, and so with the glasses, she's able to, like, step through and get him, and then they go back. So they do actually, they have to work a lot more to
they have to, like, find where he is. That's supposed to be like, oh, hey, let me try this on. Oh, there's the stairs.
Of, like,
there he is.
Being led right to him.
Yeah.
But, like, in this movie, they do kind of use that and say, like, well, we want Meg, and Charles Wallace.
They didn't care
her,
about.
So, like, they didn't
really
care. They used him as bait.
Right.
I guess, so they didn't care.
It makes a little more sense in the way they did it. Not perfect, and definitely, I feel like they could have spent more time on the planet.
Yeah.
But I get what they were going for.
Yeah. And the only other thing I wanted to mention, I know I'm talking about, like, the book did this, the book did that, but there's one important scene that is in the TV movie and in the book that I was disappointed that they took out of this movie, because I think it's a really powerful moment, is when they have got their dad, but Charles Wallace is under control of their dad is trying to tesser Calvin and Meg and himself out of Camazotz, and Meg is like, no, we can't leave Charles Wallace. In the book, so in the movie, Meg ends up, like, staying there to help him, and that's, like, kind of how the movie ends. But in the book, they actually leave him there, and she gets really upset, and basically, this whole time, she kind of has idolized her father, and in that moment, she sees his weakness, his humanity, if you will, but he just wanted to get out, and she feels betrayed. She can't forgive him. Like, it's a really powerful thing. She gets really mad at him and verbally yells at him and is like, how dare you leave your son there? Like, that's not okay. I'm not okay with you doing that. I don't forgive you. I'm gonna go back and get him. And the dad's like, well, let me help you. That's not safe. You can't go alone. And she's like, fuck you. I'm going alone. What good are you? And she kind of like, almost like comes into her own and like kind of sees her father as a human being, I think, more than just like this idolized like science god that she had. And that moment I felt was really powerful for who she is as a character, to kind of experience that conversation with him. And he has to then like live with it, and she goes and she saves Charles Wallace, and he didn't help. And they come back and she does it, and he like basically not grovels, but he feels really bad and like apologizes and whatever. And then obviously it's a movie, so they, you know, they make up. But, you know, there was a little bit of that in this. You could kind of see on her face that like she had to mentally like agree to kind of push it down and like forgive him. But I think it would have been powerful for her to like verbally say some of those things too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely read that in this movie. Like, I felt that emotion, and that's probably, you know, due to the actress Storm Reed and Ava like directing the scene. But like, I definitely felt that. But yeah, to actually see that conversation would have been
for her to like be that mature, to be able to stand up to him and say, "I'm not okay with the way you handled this situation. I don't understand why you're okay with just leaving him like that." You know, to say something like that to him would be so powerful for her as a person to be able to verbalize. But, you know, that was like my big thing that I felt was missing. But, you know, she kind of, the actress, as you said, Storm Reed, she did a really great job. Her acting was very believable, and
she did a solid job.
Powerful,
it's not an easy story to convey, because it's kind of the equivalent of like the tone of the book is very what's the word I want to use? It's very whimsical but dark, and kind of very understated in the way people talk about things. Like, not nonchalant, but just kind of like very clinical and scientific about it. Yeah. You know, it's a young adult novel that's not written like young adult novels are written now. They're just going to respond differently. Yeah. But
and like she had to act against these like very strong actors and actresses, like Mindy and Reese and Oprah and
I mean, she
Chris
like talked to Oprah like literally,
and like had to match emotionally with that. So, you know, props to her. She did a really great job. I was honestly impressed. Yeah. Clothes and sets. I do want to talk about this because the clothes, as particularly for the three misses, were just outstanding. Yeah, honestly.
Yeah, they always change outfits every different location. That was really cool.
Every scene, I was like, oh, I hope they change outfits. I want to see something new now. Like, it was just amazing. That was one of my favorite parts. Honestly, I thought that was really great.
Yeah, they all look great. Like Reese was solid.
She could totally rock that red hair, man.
Yeah,
that was great.
Red hair, blue or turquoise lipstick.
Yeah. I love this scene when she first comes to their house and she's like, "These wild nights are my glory," or something like that. Nice. And she like runs out. It was one of those scenes that's like, I know that like in some sort of montage of like 2018 movies or like the best of Reese Witherspoon's career, like her saying that line is like gonna be in a montage. It's like so perfectly delivered and like crisp, and that's like immediately what
she's like a forced nymph running away. Like, oh, what? Yeah. But instead she was running down like Jefferson towards Crenshaw. You're like, what?
Yeah. All right.
Wearing bed sheets.
All right, Reese.
Yeah, wearing bed sheets.
Which is great. And that's a thing. So there were like little bits like that were very like paying homage to the book. That's how the character was in the book. She was like a crazy old lady who stole someone's sheets. And it's like bed sheets, and that's what she's wearing. Obviously these look like costumes, but
tailored bed sheets.
The finest of bed sheets.
Yeah. And so the relevance though to the story, they do Tessar multiple times. It's not just they go from Earth to Camazotz and then back. They do go to different worlds, which I appreciated.
I mean, the traveling is important. The time travel isn't part of it isn't a big aspect of it. Like they don't utilize it to time travel.
Yeah.
It's more of an implication of that kind of travel. But yeah, the traveling, the tessering is obviously how they get around and how her dad got trapped and how she saved the day pretty much.
Yeah, it's kind of different than other time travel movies that it's not like the concept of time itself isn't as you said, it's not as relevant.
It's just another dimension that's
it's
it's
a side effect, yeah. Would you want to experience this time travel?
Yeah.
This seems
totally
really cool.
yeah. And I like that it's kind of like up to you. You have to like be good with who you are in order to like do it right. I think how cool is that? Like you can't do it unless you're really self-assured. So like there's a lot of people who we've seen in most of these movies that time travel who like they would not make the cut.
Yeah.
Looking at you, Sean Astin.
Yep, I was just gonna say
Slipstream.
Yeah,
Slipstream.
Wrinkle in time.
I mean, it would be awesome to like just travel different planets, and obviously there might be an evil out there lurking, but at the end of the day, you'll be a better person for it. So sure,
yeah,
it's true.
All it takes is love,
and then you can talk to flowers who see color. So
and Oprah.
And Oprah, I would like to speak to Mega Oprah. Yeah. Mega Oprah, tell me.
Can I ride on your shoulder, please?
She's like Megatron, but the Oprah version is like Mega.
Also, I maybe I'll do this, but if not, I want someone else in the universe to make this. The scene where Reese was talking to the flowers to talk color, I really instantly I thought, once someone made a joke where she says, like, it's okay, they speak jive, and then literally all the flowers are just talking like jive, like airplane, or like, like stereotypical ever, and I'm like, and they're just like, I don't know why it's so funny to me. Like when they catch Calvin, they're just like, "We got you, little man." I'm like, "Nice."
You should do that.
Someone should do this.
Should do that. Just use lines though from Airplane.
Yeah, just use the lines.
The jive lines from Airplane.
Jive lines from Airplane.
Particularly the old woman. I think
yes.
would be hilarious. Oh my god! Now I want to watch Airplane. Okay. Any other notes we didn't talk about? I know I talked to all my. I talked my piece about things they changed from the book.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, like obviously. It was different with this movie because we were in the theater, so we couldn't quite take notes during it. But there weren't. I mean, I think we hit everything that I wanted to talk about. So there's nothing else that I feel like we weren't at a disadvantage by watching it in theater. I think we still successfully,
and it's fresh. We saw
it's very fresh.
Mm-hmm.
I will say one minor thing. I want to see more kind of not necessarily drama, but more dramatic performances from Zach Galifianakis because he was. Actually, very strong.
You should check out Baskets.
Yes, I have seen Baskets, and like it's like I'm glad that Zach Galifianakis is kind of getting out of this. Like every role he does has to be some variation of the Hangover character he did because he's actually a very compelling actor and performer.
Yeah, can't. He has this thing that like you can't teach, you just have, but like you can't look away from him when he's in a scene.
Yeah, I mean his comedy style is pretty dry and like very sarcastic, and that obviously lends itself to drama because he's not eating the scenery. He's like he's living in the characters and
for sure. Because I really love the scene of him and Meg together when he kind of like helps her to accept like opening herself back up to her father. I thought that was really great, and it wasn't like him just like throwing jokes every 8 seconds about it. Like there was some comedy, but it was him, and she was really emotionally moved by it, and like
he was a cartoon character.
Yeah, and their hug was like powerful at the end. I thought after they had a little meeting. So cool. So let's do final reviews.
Sure.
Matt, why don't you start?
Yeah, the movie was good. I think just any story with like a young girl that has to save the day and be a warrior, I'm all about. Mm-hmm. So I think it was important, and it was. I'm glad I saw it. It's not perfect, but I wasn't expecting it to be. I know it's meant for people that aren't my age. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, it was really cool. I like all the misses, and I liked a lot of it. So I'll give it a 7 out of 10.
Cool. Yeah, I liked it. I liked it more than I disliked it. There were things that, I mean, it's a thing. When books get adapted into movies, things get changed, things have to be cut. And, like, I understand that, but, like, this book is very important. And so there's a few things, like, particularly the scene of her verbalizing her disappointment with her father that I wish were in there. So I do have to dock a little bit for that because I would have loved to see that. But, yeah, visually it was a spectacle. I do agree that, like, the first maybe 20, 25 minutes or so were a little clunky, kind of, like, giving us too much right away that kind of we could have maybe learned a little bit more first. But yeah, that being said, I think I'll give it a 6.5 out of 10. Yeah, that feels where I want to be.
Yeah, my initial thought was a 6.5 as well, because that kind of for both of the same reasons you guys are all talking about. Like it's a nice film, it's a very empowering film, it's a harmless film in terms of there's nothing bad that your kids can learn from watching this film.
Yeah, that's
and
true. It's important.
Yeah, it's important. It's well done despite the kind of clunky first act. But there's some when it's clunky or sloppy a little bit, or not sloppy is right. But when it's a little messy, it is like you kind of have to sit in that. But it doesn't last too long, and then you get out of that. And when the movie's good, it's really good. Like when it hits it, when it really gets to those points, like the moments that are really touching or spectacular, really are those. So yeah, 6.5.
Cool. Time travel rating?
Yeah, there isn't a ton of time travel. The testing is cool. The idea of the connecting two points in time, space time, whatever, is really cool. I like the idea of that. So in that aspect, it has some points, but there isn't much time travel as we usually see it. Like no one actually goes to the past or the future. They just it's time dilation, and then it's kind of manipulating space time.
Right.
But it is cool. I like the idea of it. So I'm going to give it a 3.5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It is hard to kind of judge because there isn't time travel in the sense of most of the things that we've seen. It's more dimension travel.
Yeah, it isn't inconsistent because there isn't much that they do with it. So it's I can't give that low,
Yeah, because the rules that they do set up for it, they are consistent. So yeah, I'll give it the benefit of the doubt because they did, make it more sciencey than other movies we've seen. And yeah, so I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm right around the 3 area. There's not. I mean, you can honestly. There's probably a lot of people who will walk out of it not even seeing it as a movie that uses time travel.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's almost non-existent. But for what it is, it's well thought out, especially considering how much time they actually spend explaining it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, for a talk at NASA that got him laughed out of the room. It wasn't super crazy, actually, what they're talking about. It's okay. I mean, I would have listened for at least another 20 minutes before I'd been okay, this guy's crazy.
Yeah, right?
I mean, he wasn't I was like, man, this is not the craziest thing I've heard.
He's not someone they picked up off the street.
Right.
He knows what he's talking about.
I was surprised that people got so quick to dismiss it. I'm like, oh, dang, NASA. Geez, give him a few minutes, get to his points.
Well, people didn't think Michael Jordan could be the Monstars either in Space Jam. So
exactly.
People don't know what they're talking about.
You're right. Way to go, NASA. No, I'm just saying.
It's all NASA's fault.
So yeah, 3 out of 10.
Cool. Okay, so on Rotten Tomatoes, this movie is currently at a 42%. I think it'll probably end up staying somewhere around the 40 range. The critics' consensus says that Wrinkle in Time is visually gorgeous, big-hearted, and occasionally quite moving. Unfortunately, it's also wildly ambitious to a fault, and often less than the sum of its classic parts. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
Yeah, for sure. I think the thing that makes this book so hard to adapt into a film is because so much of it is about the imagination of the
reader.
Yes, of the reader and of these worlds that Meg and Calvin and Charles Wallace travel to. That they're described, but visually you see it yourself and you kind of get to explore it with them. And I think that's what kind of makes this book really magical in that specific sense. So I think that's kind of why it's a little bit lower on Rotten Tomatoes. It's just it's basically showing us what Ava thought, which not that that's a bad thing, but it's less of getting to explore, which is something a book does that a movie
just
can't do. So, but that being said, I do think as we kind of mentioned, it's an important movie and it's relatable and representation matters, and seeing a girl like Storm Reed's version of Meg on screen as a lead in a movie is really important. So, I think it's worth seeing and, see it in theaters or buy it on demand or whatever. And, it's still a fun popcorn movie. You'll still enjoy being swept away in this world, hopefully.
By Bok Choy reach with a spoon.
Which you can see in the trailer, by the way, if you haven't seen this movie and want to know what we're talking about.
I mean, yeah, you see her face, you don't know it's her, but like in the movie, it's her.
Yeah. Do you think she did mocap?
It did look a
On
lot
her
like her,
face?
but I don't know.
Her face was modeled after her, but like she wasn't on a green screen flapping her arms.
No, not flapping her arms, but like her face.
Yeah, it looked like her
Her
face.
face, like, had, you know, like what Robert Downey Jr. does.
The
Iron
woman
Man.
after her face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so our next episode is Hyde's Choice.
Yes, frequently asked questions about time travel. It's a 2009 film. Never heard of it, never seen it. We'll have to watch it for this. While drinking at their local pub, three social outcasts attempt to navigate a time travel conundrum. It stars Chris O'Dowd, who I love.
And
Mark
Anna
Watson.
Faris.
Oh, and Anna Faris is in it too, yeah.
That's right, Anna Faris is in it.
I can't wait to see this. Yeah, none of us have seen this movie, but on the poster it says Doctor Who meets Shaun of the Dead, so I'm in for that.
Yeah, it's very British with the token American, I think.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's, we've seen the trailer for it just because we're like, oh, can we actually cover this? And it looks like they do a lot of crazy stuff. So if you haven't heard about it, check it out and we'll all talk about it.
Yeah, we're looking forward to that. And if you see Wrinkle in Time, tell us what you think. We want to hear from you. Cool. All right. Social media, we are at Time Travel Trio on Twitter and on Instagram, and we are the Time Travel Trio podcast on Facebook. We're also on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Stitcher, so if you rate, subscribe, follow us on all of those, we would appreciate it. If you write us a written review on iTunes, we will come up with a fake time travel story about you, so please do those. We would appreciate that. And personal, I am at Jen Marlis on Twitter and on Instagram.
I'm at Foreman in Space on those.
I'm at Robinson is Hyde.
And
with that,
we are out of
time